Hey everybody, I'm Dave, here to talk to you today about installing the 12-volt solution remote starter in your late model Toyota Land Cruiser. I'll go through a couple areas of this, including what you might expect from the starter, talk about some pricing that I had in a recent buy, and then mainly show people how do you gain access to the bottom of the dash panel where you'll install the starter. The instructions on the website from 12VoltSolutions are really good, but they demo it on a 4Runner, which is quite a different setup under the dash. So I really searched the internet and didn't see much on Land Cruisers, so I figured I'd give this a try and then post a video that makes sure that you can get it done as efficiently as possible. I did the job this weekend. It took me about 4.5 to 5 hours to get it done. Now, I'm not super mechanically inclined, and I really didn't know where some of the parts were, where the connections were going to go, because the 4Runner is set up differently. So I had to kind of search around a little bit. So I would say you could probably get this job done with what I'll show you today, probably about 2.5 hours. And if you're used to this kind of work, taking panels outside the inside of the car, probably under 2 hours pretty easily. I would say otherwise, the 12-volt solution, when you buy the product, you do get access to a set of video instructions for their system. That information is excellent, and so in terms of the programming of the module and the setup, it's really good, and you should definitely still look at that if you're going to do it. And you can go to YouTube and see an example of what their instructional videos are like. It's really good, and then you can decide for yourself whether you want to do this product. I'll give a disclaimer up front that I was willing to go and explore my Land Cruiser, but I'm not a professional, and so obviously you assume all risks. If you want to install this yourself, I think it's a very doable project, but you should obviously make sure you're comfortable working in the car and have a backup plan in case things don't work out. And above all, be very patient. You don't want to get mad or get overzealous and pull on a panel and break it, or else you'll get yourself a good bill. So why go with a non-OEM solution? Well, the first thing is Toyota in 2018 stopped listing the remote starter for Land Cruiser as an available dealer installed option. Actually, this is behind me is a 2021 Heritage Edition I picked up recently. I traded in a 2017 Land Cruiser, which did have the OEM starter. And there's a little bit of story to that. So when I first picked it up, the dealer took me through a range of options and kind of pushed an aftermarket option because historically the Toyota OEM remote starters aren't too good. It uses this funny tap, triple tap system from the key fob. It's a little finicky getting the timing right. The distance isn't very good, and so it's not the best system. I had it on a Sequoia before that, and that was pretty much the same 10 years ago. It wasn't a very good OEM system. So when I got my 2017, I went for the aftermarket option, which had a secondary, a very small key fob you could use, but a much better distance. But when that was put in, it caused some electrical problems with the car, and I noticed right away some funny things were happening. I'd come out in my garage in the middle of the night, and the lights would be on, and you're like, what's this? And sure enough, within a few weeks, the battery on the car had died. And long story short, within about 6 months, the dealer had taken the non-OEM model out and put a Toyota model in, and I lived with that for a few years, and it was fine, but the distance is limited, and so when I looked at this one, I'm again looking at other options. So there are some dealers who will put that original Toyota OEM starter in your Land Cruiser. I think Eric Sargent at Ed Martin Toyota does them. You can look up his videos, and there's some others. So you can still get it done if you want to have the OEM product, but you're going to have to find a dealer who's willing to work with you because it's not listed as a dealer applied modification. So you're going to have to somebody familiar with Land Cruisers who's willing to do it, and I think it'll work just the same as it did in my 2017 model if you do that. So 12VoltSolutions, if you look up their website, they do the starters for a lot of cars. They have a pretty active Toyota support and line of Toyota supplied equipment, so they do a wide range of Toyotas. And the Land Cruiser is definitely listed as a supported model. The thing is, when you get the instructional videos, they demo it on a 4Runner, and it looked pretty simple. So I figured I would take the leap. So I got their basic starter package, which uses the key fob, your Toyota key fob, and also uses a 3-button approach, tap, 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 and then the car starts. With that, you have all the same limitations of the Toyota system. It doesn't have the best distance or range. That's just the way the key fob is. And with any of these solutions, Toyota has engineered the product so when you go to the car and open the car door, the car will shut off. So I know that's a question sometime on different forums, and there's really no way around that. That's a Toyota fundamental design thing that you can't get around. So even an OEM system isn't going to do that. The thing I like about the 12-volt solution is it's really kind of plug and play. The basic package consists of a starter box and a cable package that basically inserts their cables in between the Toyota cable and the engine. So the basic cable looks like about a 2-foot cable with a set of T connectors on each side, male and female. And there's two places where you'll put that cable in between the car's cable and the car's insertion point, and that's the SLP module, which I'll show you where that is, and because it's not in the same place as the 4Runner, I learned. And then the body control module, BCM, which isn't about the same place as the module. And so basically you pull the male version out of the SLP, and you put it in the female version of their SLP connector, and then you put the male version of their SLP connector in, and that's it. And you kind of go do the same thing to the BCM. So let me take you inside the machine. I'm just going to start with showing you where those things are. I will take you through how I did this project, but if nothing else, if you're good at doing this kind of work in the car, you don't need me to tell you how to get panels off. The main helping point will be just showing you where to go, because if you model the 4Runner, you're going to do some extra work. So let me flip you around. The wire harness that you'll need to hook up the body control module and SLP connectors. Then there was the small plastic box that's the computer interface to help generate the remote start, receive the signal. And then I also had gotten an add-on package, which was the cell phone application. So that's an additional cable that goes to a small cell phone connector as well. I'll talk about a little bit why I chose to do that. So the tools, like I said, you'll need a Phillips head screwdriver, okay, medium to large size. You'll need a 10 millimeter hex nut adapter of thumb tight to get those off, and then I'd recommend some kind of plastic pry tools. I had some tools from working on cell phones and iPads that I used as well. This guy's a little unusual. So when you're taking off these plugs, a pair of needle nose pliers, or this is a surgical hemostat. But these are very helpful in both opening, kind of compressing the little tab that holds it in place, opening that up, and then pinching down and pulling it backwards. So probably a pair of needle nose pliers, fine needle nose pliers is important too. And then this guy turned out to be a lifesaver, basically a very small and an accurate pair of scissors. There was some tape I had to cut in there. Toyota has taped some of them of the wires together, and if your Land Cruiser's like mine, you're not going to be able to put the body control module in without opening up some of those wires. So you want to do that very carefully, because it's a bunch of very small gauge wires, and you've got to cut the tape in between them and do that. It sounds terrible, but the wires are wrapped around each other, so really it was pretty easy. But a fine pair of scissors like this, or toenail scissors or something like that that's very fine, I would certainly recommend that. And that was really all the tools that I needed to get this done. Okay, so when you watch their video, they have you take off the covering of the steering column, And you would do that by inserting, by taking off 2 screws. There's one there, and then you turn the wheel the other way, and there's another one there. There's 2 on the 4Runner, but on the Land Cruiser there's a 3rd one under here. There's a 3rd one, and once those are off, you would get a pry tool and gently break these connections here, and then kind of extend the separation across, and then open up there, and that'll enable you, once you separate the pieces totally, you'll be able to pull this off. Now that's how the video showed you to do it, but I will tell you, based on what I saw doing this the other day, you don't need to do that. The SLP module on the Land Cruiser is not here. It is here, behind about 4 or 5 inches behind this panel. So what you really need to do is get this panel off, and then you'll be able to access it. You'll be able to go right under here, and in fact you can see how I did it. Again, if you have expertise in this, please ignore me and do it the way you know to do it. But it worked for me. So the instructional video showed things just kind of popping off, but like you'd expect, the Land Cruiser is bolted together, and so nothing's quite that easy. You're going to need some tools to get this off. So the first thing you'll start with is there's two screws with Phillips head, with a Phillips head connection. Those are here and here, and so you'll take those screws off, and that'll enable you to take the first panel off, which is a underside panel here that you'll be able to jiggle and just kind of pull towards you and get off. There's 2 connectors to that panel, wire connectors. One's to the tire pressure monitoring system, and the other is a little LED light that lights up your footwell when you get in the car. So you'll very gently disconnect those connectors on the back side of this bottom panel, and then you'll be able to get that out of the way while you work on the rest of the car. The next big piece is going to be this main panel here. Okay, this set of push button panel is a different piece, so that will not come off with the main panel. That's the 3rd piece you'll take off. But the next one you'll take off is this large panel that goes all the way across. So to do that, there's 2 10mm bolts. One's over here on the far side, and the other one, there's a little, it's a little hard to see, but there's a little panel here. You'll need a little bit of a pry tool or something sharp. Right here, you'll open it up, and you'll be able to get in there and unhook that 10mm bolt. They weren't all very tight. I was able to actually get mine off by hand, although I did have a drill with a hex attachment on it to put it back on a little bit more firmly. So once those bolts come off, you'll be able to work your hand across the bottom, and there's a couple points where you'll feel some indentations. You'll be able to kind of push up and pop open the little plastic connectors that lock this in place. And by doing that, you'll be able to start getting a little bit of wiggle room. My best luck was working from the middle of the car to the side, where you'll get your fingers in and be able to kind of jimmy the pieces loose around the perimeter. The bottom will come off because those bolts are off. You'll be able to pop that out. Then you'll work your way over. The part I found the tightest was this panel and the area underneath the mirror adjustment area. So be patient. You'll be able to work it off. I basically use finger pressure on everything, kind of work my way around. It worked fine. Over here, these gauges are kind of tied on by two long prongs that go into some plastic slots right up top here, and then there's little prongs that go into their own plastic slots along the way. So that's what you're kind of doing, is you're going to be pulling this straight out. This is connected by a cable. There's a little bit of length to it behind it, so you're not going to rip it when you pull it out. But I didn't unhook that cable because once you get everything else off, you can kind of slide this out of the way to the side and do your work, and then just bring it back on. When you do that, when you get that larger piece out of the way. So when you get the panel down, the last thing you want to do is to remove the levers that do the trunk and fuel release. So you can kind of read the instructions on this slide, but basically those little white crosses are going to kind of push down and then slide toward the engine, and they'll slide out. So they take a little bit of work to do, but they're not attached there firmly, so just be patient. You can unhook those, and then those 2 cables will just hang there, and you can go on to complete your third piece, which will be removing the panel with all the mirror instruments. You'll be left with this module. Now, you may be able to get to the body control module with that in place, but I think it'd be a real pain. So having taken it off, I'd say it's much easier to just take it off. So what you're going to do is you're going to see another 10 millimeter hex bolt right here. Once this panel is off, you'll unscrew that. And then again, very patiently, just work yourself around here. There's two prongs here that kind of hook it onto the plastic backing. There's some prongs over here. Just take your time. This side panel does not have to come off. And you'll be able to work that out. And again, there'll be two cables from all these buttons that go back and to two connectors, and you can just gently disconnect those, and this whole module will come out, and you can set that aside. And that's it. Those three parts are really all you need to access this. I would say, if knowing what I know now, it'll probably take about 10-15 minutes to get that off. If you're patient and just kind of working through it, and then you can begin to hook up the equipment. And at this point, I'll go to some still pictures and kind of talk you through what it involves inserting the 12-volt solution components into the area behind these dash panels. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is switch out our SLP connector. So get your 12VoltSolutions wiring harness. It's pretty clearly labeled. You'll have the SLP connectors, you'll have the male and female. So just gently reach up under the steering wheel, which is what you're looking at in this picture, and you'll see the silver box, and you'll see that SLP connector going into the bottom of the box. That was not tightly attached. Just take your time, wiggle that, and pull it out. And you can stick the male SLP connector from the 12VoltSolutions cable right in there. So here's a picture where I've taken the original SLP out, and then I'll go and insert the 12VoltSolution one in and put this in the female connector for the 12VoltSolution cable, and then you're done there. So let's move on to the body control module attachments. This looks like a mess at first glance, but it's not too bad. This is what you'll see behind the panel with all the side mirror controls. Okay, there's the silver box on the right hand side of your view, and then to the left of that is the body control module, which has three white plugs inserted into it, 1, 2, and 3. Number 2 is the one that has the most cables, and is the one that you'll want to exchange for the 12VoltSolution BCM cable. So just take a moment, kind of get yourself oriented. If you just kind of feel around a little bit with your finger, you'll see that the cables that go to those three plugs are taped together. Both they're taped individually, and then they're taped one to the other. And so you're going to want to separate that tape, otherwise there's really no play between plug 2 and 3, and if you're going to get the 12VoltSolution one in there, you're going to have to separate them. So I kind of drew a little line there where, with a very fine pair of scissors, you'll want to just take your time and get your fingers in there and trim the tape. I trimmed it on the front toward me, and then I kind of turned the cable over, and there was a chance to trim it a little bit more in the back. That separated the cables that go to the second and third plug and made it real easy to separate them. I then used my needle nose pliers and went in on the left hand side of those plugs toward the driver's door, and just by kind of exerting one side of the needle nose plier inside the little there's a little bar that goes up and down there, you can push the clip and then gently just pinch the pliers and pull the plugs out. Really didn't have to pull hard at all. If you're doing that, you haven't really you haven't triggered the release clip adequately. So here's a view where I've removed plugs 2 and 3, and then that freed it up a little bit, made it a little bit easier for me to pull it toward me and cut the tape. Okay. Once the tape is cut, I put the middle plug, number 2, into the BCM connector for the wiring harness. and then took the plug from the wiring harness and slipped it inside the body control module middle slot itself. I then slipped number 3 plug back in there, and that was it. You're done with that part of the installation. Okay, so I'm just going to narrate this part a little bit, so ignore the picture for a moment. So at this point, you've got both your SLP connectors in place and your BCM module connector in place. You basically put the wiring harness connectors in between the original vehicle connectors and their insertion points, and you're ready to program your remote control box. So at this point, I have to defer you to the instructions that came along with the purchase of your 12VoltSolutions remote starter. They should have sent you an email which links back to their website. You basically click on the product you bought, and it takes you through about 4 or 5 videos that teach you a little bit about setting up and programming the module. I pretty much followed them exactly, other than the first 1 or 2 videos, which were about installing it on a 4Runner. So please do that. You don't want to tie anything up or put anything back until you verify that it's working. Okay, so take your time, follow their instructions. I did have to go through the 7 blinking red light troubleshooting video, which is about a minute long, and their instructions worked perfectly. And at that point, I was pretty confident from out that I could start the car with the key fob remotely, which was the first goal. And then at that point, I also, because I had bought the cell phone attachment, I attached that cable and just loosely routed that backwards toward the back of the foot compartment, because I had some ideas where I would put that device once I was all done. So next, I will bring you back to the picture. So next, it was cleanup time. So I had a remote start module that was working. The cables are a little bit longer than you need, and there are some zip ties that come in the box from 12VoltSolutions. So I took those zip ties. I zip tied some of the cables around the SLP box, and I zip tied some behind a little metal bar that you see on the left-hand side of the picture here to clean them up. And then I took a piece of my Velcro tape and put it on the remote control module, and then taped it to the so-called white thingy. I'm sorry, I don't know what that is, but it was a nice flat surface. There was nothing really near it, nowhere near the knee bag inflator, and so it seemed like a safe place to put it. Not too worried about that vibrating loose. This Velcro tape, I've hung some pretty heavy stuff with it in my house. It is pretty reliable. So I'm pretty comfortable it's going to stay safe there. Like I said, then I routed my the attachment for the cell phone. It had about an 18-inch cable. I routed that toward the back, and I'll show some pictures of that in a moment. So once you've placed your remote start box and attached any attachments such as a long range or the cell phone module, you're good to start working. The cell phone module took a little bit of work, so I actually closed the dash up but had that outside of the dash under the on the under dash area, so I could access it if I needed to before I close everything up. But so to reverse this, you're going to basically go 3, 2, 1. So the first step I would recommend would be putting back on the panel that holds the buttons with the mirror controls. And so you'll see up top there's your 2 white connectors. You'll simply insert those again. There should be a little click. And then there's those long prongs on the top and the shorter prongs on the side that kind of help you line it up. So it is firm, so take your time, kind of jiggle it back in, get it all in about 1 millimeter to ajar, and then you can gently use some hand pressure and it'll kind of click back into place. The fit should be excellent, so if it's not flat, you may have a connector that's not inserted right. So that's the first step. So the next step is going to be putting the main dash panel back on. So if you're like me, you kind of left it hanging there over toward the center console on those wires you see up at the top right of this picture. It was out of the way, and work with it. The first thing will be to insert your gas cap and trunk release cables back into their spots. Okay, so this actually took me took me 2 times. So I say it's not that hard to do. You're basically going to come up from beneath the dash panel and kind of come up and toward the seat. And what you're going to do is the part of that white cross there on each of those that is most toward the seat has to kind of hook over a little bit of the black plastic on the dash panel. And then the whole thing will kind of pop up into place and be just fine. So I hit 50% on my first try. I think it was the gas cap. When I put the panel back on, I said, oh, this gas cap is a little crooked. So I'm a perfectionist. It worked fine, but it drove me crazy. So I took the panel off again, and it was that I had not kind of pulled it far enough forward in what would be the view that you're looking at here to make it work. So it wasn't too hard, just kind of jiggled it a little bit, got it firm, and you could kind of feel when it's in the right place. It's very firm, and it looks straight when you put the dash panel back on. Once that's done, what you'll want to do is kind of, you see all those prongs sticking out all across there, those insertion points. So I'd probably start on the lower part of the panel and try to get those lined up with the holes in the dash, and then kind of work your way up. Again, I typically I started from the center console area and then took it off toward the driver's seat. I would probably, toward the driver's door, I would probably reinstall it in reverse. Start toward the driver's door, get those pieces in, and then move your way across. Okay, and then the last thing is the tall prongs on top of the other cluster of buttons to the right of the steering wheel. Those are a pretty good guide point for making sure that that panel is lined up correctly. Same thing as before, kind of get as many prongs in as you can, jiggle it down to about 1 or 2 millimeters of space between the panel and the dash itself. And once you're pretty comfortable that everything looks like it's straight and it's going to line up, you can kind of use some gentle hand pressure and gentle taps around the periphery to get it to click back into place. Again, the Land Cruiser is a precision machine. You really shouldn't have any gaps or anything when it's left. It should look very clean, just like when you started the project. Once you're sure the fit is pretty clean, you can go ahead and put those 10mm bolts back, one toward the center console and one over toward the driver's door. And once you have those bolts back on, it's time to put the underdash on. So if you use the long-range connection module, or you purchase the cell phone connection module, you'll have to decide whether you want those to go. I chose to put my the cell phone module over the footrest attached with Velcro to the bottom of that panel. So I had to route the wiring now before I put that underdash panel back on again. So just keep that in mind. I kind of had it hanging there in the back. So this underdash panel, I don't have it labeled, but there's 2 little prongs on the back of this panel, and there's some pretty big spaces in the plastic at the back of the compartment where you're going to kind of slide that up into those 2 holes. Those 2 prongs will go in the holes, and then you'll just lift the whole thing upward and click it into place. There's a variety of little clips that will keep it in place, and after you do that, you can go ahead and put your 2 Phillips head screws back that you took out. So this is a view of the underdash, kind of looking up from the floor, and that on the bottom left side, that's the footrest for the left foot. So that's where I Velcroed the cell phone attachment. Is pretty small, so it's pretty easy to fit there. It's very light. I have no concern it's going to fall off. That Velcro is going to hold it there just fine. You can see how I had routed the cable kind of behind the panel. There's a little space there. It came out just fine. It's not going to intrude with any operation of the vehicle or anything else there. And then to a little bit of the left of that, you can also kind of see one of the prongs there, where when you reinsert this, you'll be able to get the underdash panel in the right position before you push upward and clip it into the clips beneath the dash itself. So this is a pic after I was all done. So the panel fit and tightness is just fine. The bolts are back in place, the screws are back in place, and I have a remote starter module that works, and then a cell phone module as well. So should go back together just fine. And again, like I said, I'm no expert, so if I can do this, I think you can too. So here I am out on the walk, and figured I'd try to test my key fob from down the block. So it's hard to see. There's a black Land Cruiser there over my left shoulder, and no, I got nothing out of it. For that was probably about 150, 200 yards. So then I thought I'd get a little bit closer and see. Let's try it again. This is probably about 110, 120 yards. There's pretty good visibility, but I was having no luck. Usually you'd see a blink or two. Okay, I just want to take a moment and show you the cell phone app. So it's called CL6. You open it up. I put it in my car earlier, so it shows my beautiful Land Cruiser right there, kind of. It's not perfect. It's not a Heritage Edition, but hey. So there you go. Start is the round circle. You can stop it or turn it off with the round circle with the X. You can lock it. You can unlock it. It also gives a timer for 15 minutes, which is how long it'll run before it shuts off. And then the other thing I kind of like is that little battery there, that you can see the current battery current. That's kind of cool. Having had a prior non-OEM remote starter drain my battery and cause all kinds of havoc, I really like that little feature. So I kind of check that every time I open it up, and so far it has worked just fine. I'm very happy. Hey guys, so it is now about 2 weeks since I shot my original video and installed the 12-volt solution remote starter. You know, a lot of videos, they'll do an upgrade and everything's great and everybody's all excited, and then like 2 months later, like, oh damn, the tires rubber, oh shoot, something doesn't work. So I did want to take a couple weeks before I put the video out to make sure everything worked as expected. So glad to announce, yeah, no electrical malfunctions, no suspicious lights on and off like I'd experienced with a prior non-OEM remote starter on my 2017 Land Cruiser. Works like a charm. Works just like a charm. General observations. One, the new key fob is a little bit different than the one I have on the 2007, because now they have the trunk release. If anything, it got bigger, which is hard to imagine because the last one was pretty clunky already. But key fob still doesn't have very good range. So if you're going to be doing something 50, 100 feet away, like a car in front of your house or work, you're pretty close to your parking spot, I think the key fob's just fine. It works pretty reliably. I would say at my work, this is about 112 yards or something to the car. It's hit or miss. Sometimes I just can't get it to take. I would say the 12-volt solution, the tap, tap, tap rhythm is a little bit easier to hit on this key fob than on the OEM, which has to be a tap, tap, tap. It's a kind of a certain funky rhythm you gotta hit. So it's a little bit easier, but the range is no better. 12-volt Solutions does sell a range extender. I didn't get that because I got the cell phone app. And that's what I'll finish with, is the cell phone app. I like that, okay? So was that worth an extra 200 bucks? It's been 2 weeks, and my answer is yep, it sure is. And I know some people might balk at having to pay an extra 40 or 50 bucks a year for a cell tower subscription. For that, like I said, it's winter here. We've been through 2 blizzards. I'm sold. I would definitely buy that again if given the opportunity of what I'm seeing now. I think in the summer when it gets real hot here as well, be good to get the car cooled down a little bit as well. So no glitches, works at least as advertised, and the cell phone app is awesome. So if I had to do it again, would I spend my $450 and do it and do this project? Absolutely. So I hope that helps some of you decide maybe to do this upgrade, or maybe pick another manufacturer remote starter. It's all good. I think the pictures in the video will help you either way. And thanks for watching. Bye.